Not to sound like a fortune cookie, or maybe the guy at the bar you had to unfortunately sit next to who's had one too many and decided he's a philosopher, but part of life and part of network security is preparing for a worst case scenario. We can do everything we can to prepare or to prevent disaster, but every once in a while, unfortunately, it still happens. And with network security, that can happen because an attacker's developed a new attack. Maybe they just figured out how to hack your particular system. It doesn't matter. Again, part of network security is being ready to efficiently get your network back online and as quickly as possible after something bad happens. You can't be looking around saying, I think we got our backups and I'm not exactly sure. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy that says, this is horrible that it happened. We'll talk about it later, about how we can prevent it from happening again. Right now, let's get things back online. Because, as I've mentioned a couple times throughout the course, and probably will again, a remote user or a remote attacker can do some really serious damage to our network with just a couple of keystrokes. They don't even have to be an advanced user. If they get in with that telnet password that never got changed, maybe they just know enough to do a write erase and then reload a router. But still, you've got a mess on your hands. Because if your non-volatile RAM is gone or your flash is deleted, anything, you got a real mess. And we know the importance of backups. Most of us do them. A few still pay just a little lip service to it. You don't want to be that guy either. And when it comes to the Cisco Resilient Configuration, I love that name. It gives you a backup of two vital files. It gives you a backup, one of the two commands that we're going to use, gives you a backup of your iOS image, and the other gives you a backup of your startup config file. And there's a very pleasant side effect that we're going to see in action here on the live equipment. And another great thing, I've got a whiteboard coming up with with a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be seeing during the lab, so don't worry about having to write all this stuff down. But the key here is that when we're on here, it's really quite simple, and the files are going to be local. Because there's nothing wrong with copying files from a TFTP server. We all have to do that sooner or later, but it's still a quicker process, and you don't have to watch all those, the pound signs go across the screen as you're loading it from another server. It's a lot quicker, we'll all agree, if you can do it from that local device. And the resilient configuration lets us do that. So let's see this in action. The config tool itself. And just for the record, and I usually don't even mention this, but for the record, as you can see, I am in through Telnet, and that is going to play a role here. So let's go ahead and first run the show command that we're going to use to verify this config on a regular basis. And it shows secure boot set. A lot of the time I just type show secure boot, but the full command is show secure boot set. And instead of getting the typical blank line, when we don't have anything to show, the router is telling us, hey, the image and configuration resilience is not active. It's kind of formal, but there you go. So we're going to fix that right now. And also, I have made the font one size smaller than in the other videos, so your eyes aren't playing tricks on you, but there's a lot of readout here I want you to be able to see and not have it hanging off the screen. So with secure here, we see two different options, just two. Boot config and boot image. Boot config archives the startup config, boot image secures the running image. Now you might look at that and say, well, is there some kind of hair-splitting difference here between archive and secure? To me, not really, because you're doing the same thing both times. You're saving the file to flash in case you need it. So let's go ahead and run secure boot image first. And we run it and we get a message, and that is about it. And that's all you should expect to see. It's that quick, it's that simple. And it just tells you iOS Resilience 5, image Resilience active. You have successfully secured the running image. So that seemed pretty simple. Let's do the boot config. And that took us off the side there, but that's okay. I'll go right back over here. The message is very similar, iOS Resilience config Resilience active. And it says successfully secured the config archive, and it also tells you the location of the file and the name of it. Notice that it does end in AR for archive. And that is really it. There aren't a lot of options. There's one option I am going to show you, because while the CCNA security exam, I don't think, it doesn't look like it's going to hold you responsible for doing an actual restore or knowing how to do that. We're going to talk about that anyway, because it's not much good in saving this if you don't know how to use it when you need it. So let's go ahead and run show secure boot set. I'm going to say I forgot logging sync. There we go. And it shows secure boot set. And there's your router ID for iOS resilience. And here's all the information you'd ever need. The version, secure archive flash, that would be your image ending in BIN, and right below it is the config, the .ar. So that's a great thing. So now if you do have to do some kind of restore, the files are local, so you don't have to copy them from somewhere else. And if you've done a lot of that like I have, you know that's a big relief, just because sometimes copies work beautifully, right? And then sometimes they just don't. So that is a big help. Now, let's go back and revisit one of these commands, because I want to take you a little beyond what you'll need for this exam, because you need to know this one. In case you need to restore the startup configuration, all you do is, you reload and you ignore the prompt to go into setup mode, because we all hate setup mode, except for that one guy over there. But everybody hates setup mode. You don't want to do that here. What you want to do is just, go past setup mode, and you know what happens. You get dropped at the prompt. All you got to do is run secure boot config restore. And then, let me run iOS help after that, and then it's word fully qualified file path to restore configuration to. So you just go from there, but that's exactly how you would do it. Now, just off the top of my head, and it's on the whiteboard as well for the next screen, if you are doing a reload, if you need to reload the image, what you've got to do is go into ROM monitor mode and use the boot command followed by the name of that file, of the image file. And then you just go from there. It's really that simple. That's really all there is to it. You just use the boot command from there and you're gold. It would not hurt you in real life. And actually, I'll find the URL for that document. Cisco's got a good little document on this tool, and it shows you in print, what to walk through it. But again, there are only a few steps to it. The restore actually works pretty well. But let's concentrate on knowing those two commands, what they back up, and something else. Let me run this by you. So part of this, of course, one thing with this tool, it's not actively fighting anybody, right? It's not actively preventing anybody from telnetting in or connecting. So it's more of a recovery tool, and that's fantastic. Nothing wrong with that, like I said. But let's say that I am now a telnetting user who is evil, or I just got fired today and you didn't change the password in time, so here we go, and I'm in, and I'm going to erase the config, and I'm going to turn this off too, just to be a total jerk. Right, so let's see, what do you think? Put no secure boot config. Yeah, it seems to be a legal command. It's not saying unrecognized or anything like that. So I just hit that, and look at this. I love this. You must be logged on to the console to apply this command. Great detail to remember. Now we're telnetted in, so we've proven that you can log in remotely and enable both of these features, but you can't log in remotely and disable either one. Just to prove it, let's try the boot image. Exact same thing, and you also get a console message, non-console configuration request denied for command, and then it's going to tell you no secure boot config and boot image. Pretty cool, huh? Great exam detail to remember too for this particular tool. Again, we telnetted in here, and so we telnetted in, and we were able to enable both, but we couldn't disable either one. And I'm going to bring up a console connection that I have, and I know the font's a little small on this, believe me, we're not going to be here long. But notice that we see the messages here when we secured the running image, and when we did the same for the config, the non-console requests come up here as well. But if we wanted to turn it off, what we would need to do boot. That's the hardest part sometimes, remember where the hyphen goes. We could go to the direct connection, and you could see no secure boot config, and then we get the result disabled secure config archival. It actually removed that file from flash, etc. So that is a great detail to know, and a great little security detail as well. So let's go over a couple of things here as far as the resilient config goes. You verify it with show secure boot set. Don't try to use dir in exec mode because it's not going to work. In that mode, dir cannot display secure files. Now you can do so in ROM monitor mode or ROM on. So if you're in ROM monitor mode and you need to see the exact file path, because remember where it asked us for it, it asked us for the config file there. In ROM monitor, you would need the image file because that's the only reason you would be in there, and you could just copy the name of it and put it right back in behind the boot command. Again, it can be activated remotely, but not deactivated remotely. Again, it doesn't actively prevent damage. There's no login involved or anything like that, but it does speed up the recovery process, and a big part of that is that the files are stored locally. And if I sound like somebody who's had, some slow copies and, they start hanging for no good reason, yeah, I've been through that in some lab environments, so I'm always happy when the files are stored locally. Again, if you are having to reload the image, recover the image, just boot from ROM mode with the boot command, and then it will ask you right behind that, what's the location of the file, and then it will load the iOS image from there. You can still see the file name with show secure boot set, but don't go into setup mode when prompted, then use secure boot config restore to restore the configuration. A couple of steps there. But really, that is all there is to the resilient configuration. It's a fantastic tool, just a couple of commands. Hope you never have to use it, but just in case you need it, it's a great thing to have. And as I mentioned in the notes for this, I'm recording this on November 8th. In the notes for this, I was going to say what date, but I can do it right now. As I'm uploading this to the course, what I'll do is on Udemy, I will go ahead and paste the URL in there if you want to go ahead and get the whole PDF. And for the DVD purchasers, that'll be in your email and your package as well. So that is it for Resilient Config, and let's head to the next section.